It was the kind of autumn that made people believe the world was simple. October 1987, in the river town of Millhaven, Ohio, population 4,200. Where the maple trees had turned the color of old bricks, and the smell of wood smoke drifted through the neighborhoods every morning like something handed down from generation to generation. The kind of place where people left screen doors unlocked and knew the names of every dog on the block. The Millhaven Fall Festival had been running for 31 years that October, the same weekend every year, funnel cake and cider presses on the courthouse lawn, a hayride that circled the old Wickham farm, and a petting zoo that drew families from 3 counties over. Gary and Donna Bennett had been coming since before they were married. Now they brought their son. Noah Bennett was 3 years old. He had a gap between his 2 front teeth that made his smile look like a Halloween jack-o'-lantern, which was something his grandmother Loretta said about once a week, and which Noah found enormously funny. He weighed 32 pounds. He wore a red corduroy jacket that Donna had stitched his initials into on the left breast, NJB, because he was always leaving his things places, and she was always finding them again. He loved pigs. Not the idea of pigs, actual pigs. Any time the family drove past a farm on Route 9, he would press his face against the car window and make a sound that Gary could only describe as pure joy. The petting zoo at the Millhaven Fall Festival had 3 pigs. Noah had been talking about them since September. Gary Bennett was a middle school shop teacher at Millhaven Combined. He coached youth baseball on Saturdays and kept a woodworking bench in the garage where he was slowly, carefully, building a rocking horse for Noah's 4th birthday, which was 11 weeks away. Donna worked the front desk at Millhaven Family Dental 4 days a week. She sang in the choir at First Methodist and organized the church's canned food drive every November. With the same quiet, determined efficiency she applied to everything. They lived in a yellow house on Carver Street with a brown fence Gary had built himself and a garden Donna kept all spring and summer until the first frost took it. They were not people anything terrible was supposed to happen to. Nobody in Millhaven was. At approximately 2:20 on the afternoon of October 10, 1987, Gary Bennett bought Noah a paper cup of apple cider from the booth near the east gate of the festival grounds. Noah drank it fast, the way he did everything, and asked for another. Gary laughed and told him one was enough, and Noah said, very seriously, that he was very thirsty. Donna was 10 feet away, browsing a table of handmade quilts she would never quite bring herself to buy. She saw them standing there, Gary holding the empty cup, Noah gesturing with both hands in that passionate 3-year-old way. She turned back to the quilts. It was a moment. The kind of moment that makes up a life. When she looked again, Noah was gone. Gary thought he had walked to the petting zoo, which was visible across the open lawn. He walked there quickly, still unhurried, still in the register of a father who has not yet crossed the threshold between inconvenience and terror. The pigs were there, 3 of them, exactly as advertised. Noah was not. By 2:30, Gary was running. By 2:45, Donna's voice had become something neither of them recognized. By 3:15, the Millhaven Police Department had 4 officers on the festival grounds, and the organizers had stopped the hayride. By sundown, Noah Bennett was gone. He had been out of his parents' sight for less than 4 minutes. The cup of apple cider had left a small orange ring on the sleeve of Gary's flannel shirt. He noticed it 3 days later and could not bring himself to wash it out. The initial search was everything a small community can give. Sheriff Roger Allman put every available deputy on the ground by nightfall. The festival volunteers became searchers. Boy Scout Troop 118 came out Saturday morning in formation. The First Methodist Choir, which Donna had sung in for 9 years, organized a phone tree and kept it running for a week. The Millhaven Courier ran Noah's school photograph. the one with the gap-toothed smile, on the front page 3 days running. The reward fund reached $11,000 within 10 days, which in 1987, in Millhaven, Ohio, was an extraordinary sum. Lead Detective Carl Overbeck of the Clark County Sheriff's Department was assigned the case on day 4, when it became clear this was not a simple wandering child situation. Overbeck was 44 years old, a compact, methodical man who had worked law enforcement in Clark County for 18 years and who kept a handwritten notebook for every case he touched, a habit he had picked up from his father, a former MP, who told him once that the notes you write on the back of napkins are always the notes you need 6 years later. Overbeck had 2 daughters of his own, ages 6 and 9. He did not mention this to the Bennetts. He didn't need to. They could see it in the way he sat across from them at the kitchen table on Carver Street, turning his pen over and over in his hands, asking questions slow and careful, like someone who understood exactly what the answers would cost. The investigation turned first toward James Corley, a 38-year-old registered sex offender who had been released from Mansfield Correctional 18 months earlier and was living in a boarding house on the edge of town. Corley had attended the festival that Saturday. 2 witnesses placed him near the petting zoo around the time Noah vanished. Overbeck brought him in. Corley was cooperative. He had an alibi for 2:20 that checked out. He had been playing cards at the boarding house until after 3, and the other players confirmed it, reluctantly but consistently. There was no physical evidence connecting him to Noah. After 4 days of interviews and a search of his residence and vehicle that turned up nothing, Overbeck was required to release him. Donna Bennett, who had been told nothing specific about Corley, but understood something had been pursued and abandoned, sat at her kitchen table that night and held a church bulletin she hadn't been able to put down for a week. Gary sat across from her. They didn't speak. There was a glass of water in front of each of them that neither of them drank. The Clark County Sheriff's Department pursued 11 significant leads over the first 2 years. A blue van seen idling near the festival's east gate. A carnival worker with a prior record who had been near the grounds that weekend. A woman in Dayton who called to say she had seen a child matching Noah's description at a truck stop on I-70. Overbeck followed each one to its end. Each end was a wall. By 1990, the active investigation had been officially placed on what the department called low-resource monitoring, which was the language they used when there was nothing left to monitor. The red corduroy jacket with NJB stitched on the breast was never found. Loretta, Noah's grandmother, planted a red maple in her backyard in November 1988, 1 year after her grandson disappeared. She called it Noah's tree. It was maybe 3 feet tall when she put it in the ground. By 1994, she could sit in its shade. She sat there most evenings that she was able. In an old aluminum lawn chair she kept out back year-round, whether or not it was the kind of weather for sitting outside. The neighbors knew not to comment on this. Gary built the rocking horse. He finished it in January 1988, 3 months after Noah vanished, because he could not finish it. It sat in the corner of Noah's room, which Donna kept exactly as it was, for years. Friends who came to the house found reasons not to go upstairs. By 1993, 6 years had passed. The reward fund had gone cold. The posters in the Millhaven Library and the barber shop on Main Street had been replaced once, and then not replaced again. Gary and Donna's marriage held, which was not something either of them took for granted, and which required the kind of daily, deliberate effort that left marks in a person. They went to First Methodist. They kept the brown fence painted. They did not move, though people told them sometimes that maybe they should. Every October, they walked through the Fall Festival, which continued each year because a town cannot stop living, and Donna looked at the quilts she never bought and Gary looked at the petting zoo, and they drove home before the sun went down. Carl Overbeck retired from the Clark County Sheriff's Department in 2001 after 32 years. He took the Bennett case file with him, not the original. The original stayed in the archives. But the copies he had made over the years, the notebook pages, the photographs, the interview transcripts, he kept them in a cardboard box in the second bedroom of the ranch house he shared with his wife in Enon. Every few months, he opened the box. He was not sure what he expected to find that he hadn't found before. He looked anyway. His daughters were grown by then. One of them lived in Columbus with her husband and 2 kids. The other had moved to Portland. When they called on Sundays, Overbeck would sometimes mention the Bennett case. Not often, just occasionally, the way a person returns to a splinter they haven't been able to reach. By 2015, 28 years had gone by. Donna had retired from the dental office. Gary had stopped coaching baseball the year his knees gave out. Loretta had passed in 2009, sitting in the aluminum lawn chair under Noah's tree, which by then had reached 40 feet, and which the family now called her Tree 2. Gary took the lawn chair and kept it in the garage, next to the rocking horse that was still in the corner of what they still called Noah's room, with what Donna still kept exactly as it was. Then, in the spring of 2024, something happened that the Bennett family had given up expecting. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children had been systematically uploading cold case biological samples to a federally maintained genetic genealogy database, a process that uses DNA from crime scenes and unidentified individuals to cross-reference public ancestry databases, the same services that ordinary people use to trace their family trees, then works backward through distant cousin matches to identify unknown individuals. The method had been used to break open dozens of cold cases across the country in the preceding 6 years. In March of 2024, a genetic genealogy analyst in Columbus named Brenda Solis was working a batch of Ohio cold cases when a profile match appeared in the database that she had not seen before. It was not a crime scene DNA sample that had produced the match. It was a voluntary submission. A 39-year-old man in Canton, Ohio, a man who had been living under the name Michael Hargrove for as long as he could remember, had submitted a saliva swab to a commercial ancestry website 2 years earlier, curious about his heritage, because he had no answers to give his own children when they asked about family medical history. He had been told his entire life, by the couple who raised him, that he was the biological son of a distant relative who had given him up privately in 1987, and that there were no records. He had learned to stop asking. But his daughter had asked him, at 9 years old, where her grandparents came from, and he had not been able to answer. So he had submitted the swab. Brenda Solis stared at the screen for a long time. Then she called her supervisor. She said very quietly, "Run it again." They ran it again. The result was the same. The DNA pointed, through a chain of second and third cousins on 2 separate branches, to a biological origin that converged on a single family. A family from Clark County, Ohio. A family named Bennett. Detective Cheryl Okafor of the Clark County Sheriff's Department Cold Case Unit contacted Gary and Donna Bennett on a Tuesday afternoon in April 2024. She asked if she could come to the house. She did not tell them why on the phone. Gary would say later that he knew the moment he heard her voice. Not what she was going to say exactly, just that it was going to be something that would require him to be sitting down. Okafor was 38 years old. She had been with the cold case unit for 6 years. She had closed 4 cases in that time, which was 4 more than the unit had closed in the decade before she joined it. She was thorough, unhurried, and specific. She had read the Bennett case file 3 times before she ever made that phone call. She had driven past the yellow house on Carver Street twice, on her own time, before she knocked on the door. She sat across from Gary and Donna at the kitchen table, and she told them what the Dina had found. She told them that the match would require confirmation. She told them that the process would take weeks. She told them there were steps. She told them all of this carefully, with the measured language of someone who understands that hope is the most dangerous thing she could be handing these people. Gary asked, "Is he alive?" Okafor said, "Yes." The confirmation came in 6 weeks. A court-ordered Dina comparison between the man in Canton and the Bennetts produced a result that eliminated all statistical doubt. Michael Hargrove was, by every biological measure, Noah James Bennett, born July 18, 1984, in Millhaven, Ohio, who had vanished from the Clark County Fall Festival on October 10, 1987, at the age of 3 years and 2 months. He had been found 37 years later, 94 miles from where he had last been seen. The couple who had raised him as Michael Hargrove, Robert and Patricia Hargrove, both now in their 70s, both residents of a retirement community in Akron, were arrested in May 2024 on charges of kidnapping, custodial interference, and conspiracy. Investigators determined that Robert Hargrove, who had worked a concession stand adjacent to the festival grounds that October as a vendor for a regional food supplier, had taken Noah during the brief gap in his parents' attention. Witnesses placed him in that area. A former business partner, interviewed in the weeks following the arrest, told investigators that Hargrove had made comments in the late 1980s, comments the partner had not understood at the time, about how easy it would be to disappear a young child in a crowd. The partner had thought he was joking. He had not slept well since the arrest. Patricia Hargrove told investigators she had been reluctant at first. Then, she had not been. The child had been with them for 3 years before she stopped thinking of him as anyone else's. By the time Michael Noah was in school, she said she had put the other thing away. She used those words, the other thing, as if what she had participated in was a minor administrative error that had simply needed filing. Robert Hargrove entered a guilty plea in October 2024, 37 years to the month after he had walked a 3-year-old boy away from a petting zoo in Millhaven, Ohio. He was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. He was 74 years old. Patricia Hargrove received a sentence of 8 years following her own plea agreement. The man who had spent 37 years as Michael Hargrove sat in a room with Gary and Donna Bennett for the first time in May 2024. He has said publicly, in a brief statement released through his attorney, that it was the most difficult and the most important conversation of his life. That he does not yet know who he is going to be. That he is learning. Gary Bennett told a reporter from the Columbus Dispatch that the first thing he noticed about his son, the thing he noticed before anything else, was the gap between his 2 front teeth. Still there. Still exactly the same. Noah Bennett had a 4-year-old daughter. She had gray eyes, like Donna. She had not known until May 2024 that she had grandparents. She knows now. Carl Overbeck, 81 years old and living in the same ranch house in Enon, heard the news on a Tuesday evening in April. His daughter in Columbus called him. She said, "Dad." They found him. He said he had to call her back. He sat in the second bedroom for a while. The cardboard box was on the shelf where it had been for 23 years. He looked at it for a long time. Then he put his coat on and went for a walk. He was back in 40 minutes. He ate the dinner that was on the stove. He called his daughter back and they talked for an hour and a half. He still has the box. He says he is not sure what to do with it now. He is thinking about it. The rocking horse that Gary Bennett built in the winter of 1987, the one that sat in the corner of Noah's room for 37 years, has been moved to the living room of his son's home in Canton. His granddaughter, who is 4 years old and has gray eyes, rides it on Wednesday evenings when her father brings her to Carver Street. The aluminum lawn chair is back under Noah's tree in Loretta's yard, which belongs to a different family now, but the tree is still there, 40 feet tall, and the family who lives there knows why it was planted and leaves it where it is. Noah Bennett was 3 years old when he was taken. He was 39 years old when he was found. In between those two facts are 37 years of questions that nobody had the power to answer, but that his parents refused to stop asking. Justice doesn't always arrive on time. It doesn't always arrive gently. But the Bennetts would tell you, if you asked them, that it arrives. That the truth has a way of surfacing no matter how deep it is pressed down. That there is no statute of limitations on love, and apparently none on Dina. Before we close, what does this case say to you about how long a family can hold on? Is 22 years in federal prison for stealing 37 years of a person's life and the lives of his family justice? Or is it something short of it? And what do you think Noah Bennett's path forward looks like? Building a life from two identities, two families, two histories that had no reason to belong to the same person? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. This channel exists because people like you believe that these stories deserve to be told and that the truth deserves to be heard no matter how long it takes. Justice found Noah Bennett after 37 years. Stories like his are why this channel exists. If you believe truth is worth pursuing no matter how long it takes, subscribe. More cases are waiting in the description below. Thank you for being here.